When you shift from a victim mentality to an ownership mentality, everything in your life begins to move in a different direction. Most people never experience real transformation because they're trapped inside a story where they are powerless. They wake up every day rehearsing the same narrative. Life is hard. Life is unfair. Life is happening to me. And as long as that belief sits at the center of their identity, they will always interpret struggle as punishment, setbacks as signs of failure, and challenges as proof that they're not enough. But the truth is nothing changes on the outside until something shifts on the inside. The mindset you carry determines the meaning you assign to everything in your life. And the meaning you assign determines the actions you take. This is why the first and most important shift is moving from a mindset of victimhood to a mindset of ownership. When you embrace ownership, you stop waiting for someone to fix your life. You stop waiting for circumstances to improve before you improve. You stop waiting for permission to start living. Ownership means you accept the truth that your life will be the direct reflection of what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you invest in. It means you stop blaming your upbringing, your environment, your past mistakes, or your current challenges. But this shift is not just motivational talk. Ownership is a fundamental rewiring of your internal identity. It's the moment you stop seeing yourself as someone the world acts upon and start seeing yourself as someone who acts upon the world. And when that shift happens, your energy changes, your decisions change, your standards change, and your outcomes change. The victim mentality convinces you that your future is predetermined by your past. Ownership reminds you that your future is shaped by your choices. The victim mentality trains you to focus on what you can't control. Ownership forces you to master what you can control. Your mindset, your behavior, your habits, your environment, and your response to adversity. Victimhood is passive. Ownership is active. Victimhood waits. Ownership initiates. Victimhood reacts. Ownership creates. When you adopt ownership, you realize that the same world that stopped you yesterday can't stop you today because you don't respond to it the same way. You've upgraded the operating system inside your mind, and now your life has no choice but to upgrade with it. Ownership is not about ignoring problems. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's not about denying pain or acting like struggle doesn't hurt. Ownership is about recognizing that even when life gives you something you didn't choose, you still get to choose your response. You still get to choose what you do next. You still get to choose what you build from it. That is where your power lies. And when you start living from that place, you begin to unlock levels of possibility you never imagined. Because the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I do with this? Your mind opens, your creativity activates, and your potential comes alive. Most people think the breakthrough begins with the removal of limitations. It doesn't. The breakthrough begins when you stop letting limitations define you. There will always be reasons to quit, always reasons to shrink, always reasons to delay, always reasons to make excuses. But excuses are the language of a mind that has given up control. Ownership is the language of a mind that has taken its power back. You cannot master your life as long as you are rehearsing excuses. You cannot rise while defending your limitations. You cannot transform while staying loyal to the stories that keep you comfortable but stuck. Ownership demands that you confront the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Where you are today may not be your fault, but where you end up will be your responsibility. When you embrace ownership, you stop negotiating with average. You stop lowering your standards to match your feelings. You stop allowing circumstances to dictate your identity. Instead, you raise your standards to match the future you want to build. Ownership makes you serious about your actions. It makes you intentional about your decisions. It makes you committed to growth, no matter how slow it feels. Ownership turns discipline from something painful into something powerful. You begin to see discipline not as restriction, but as the price of freedom. Because the truth is, freedom is never free. It is always purchased by the decisions you make today that protect the future you desire. Ownership also changes the way you interpret struggle. The person with a victim mindset sees struggle as a signal to stop. The person with an ownership mindset sees struggle as the signal to grow. The victim says, this is too hard. Ownership says, this is developing me. The victim sees closed doors. Ownership sees new routes. The victim expects failure. Ownership expects solutions. And when you expect solutions, your mind begins to think in solutions. When you expect progress, your mind begins to find ways to create progress. When you expect better, you start becoming better. Your expectations become your internal guidance system, and ownership sets those expectations at a higher level. Owning your life also forces you to stop hiding behind circumstances and start maximizing opportunity. Every person who experiences a breakthrough experiences it because they decided to take control of their direction. They decided to stop waiting for perfect conditions. They decided to stop complaining about what they didn't have and start using what they did have. Ownership is the birthplace of resourcefulness. It's the birthplace of creativity. It's the birthplace of confidence, because confidence doesn't come from winning. Confidence comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you will keep moving, keep learning, keep creating, and keep rising. There is a version of you that you haven't met yet, a version overflowing with clarity, discipline, resilience, and purpose. That version is waiting on the other side of ownership. When you stop living like life owes you something and start living like you owe your purpose everything, doors open, opportunities appear. People notice. Life begins to respond differently to you because you are showing up differently to life. Ownership is the mindset that separates the average from the exceptional. It separates the dreamers from the doers. It separates those who wish from those who work. And once you step into ownership, you become unstoppable, not because the world makes it easy, but because you stop letting anything make you quit. The moment you embrace ownership is the moment you activate your potential. It's the moment you rise above your past. It's the moment you stop surviving and start building. Because when you own your life, you own your results. And when you own your results, you own your future. When you begin to see challenges as opportunities for growth, your entire relationship with adversity transforms. Most people spend their lives running from discomfort, avoiding anything that stretches them, and resisting anything that disrupts their routine. They think the goal of life is to feel safe, to feel stable, to feel comfortable. But comfort never made anyone powerful. Comfort never built greatness. Comfort never developed mastery. The people who rise, the people who elevate, the people who transform their life are the ones who understand that challenges are not interruptions. They are invitations. They are not barriers. They are builders. They are not sent to break you. They are sent to shape you. The moment you stop seeing problems as an attack and start seeing them as assignments, everything shifts. You begin to look at difficulty through a new lens. Instead of asking, why is this happening? You begin to ask, what is this preparing me for? What strength is this developing in me? What new version of myself is this calling me to become? Because every challenge carries two things, pressure and potential, and the greatness inside you is only revealed when pressure meets potential. Most people waste their challenges because they misinterpret them. They think a challenge is a punishment. They think a challenge is evidence that they are not capable or not chosen or not equipped. They think a challenge is a sign that they're going the wrong way. But in reality, challenges are often proof that you're moving into a higher level. They are indicators that you are stepping outside the old version of yourself and entering a new dimension of growth. Every new level of your life requires a new level of you, and that level is activated through challenge. Think about it. Pressure expands capacity. Resistance builds strength. Struggle unlocks strategy. Hardship shapes resilience. Without challenges, you become fragile. Without challenges, you stay small. Without challenges, you live your entire life inside the limits of your comfort zone. And comfort zones don't create high achievers. They create people who talk about potential but never produce it. When you embrace challenges, you stop shrinking in the face of difficulty. You stop telling yourself stories that justify quitting. You stop allowing fear to direct your decisions. Instead, you begin to stand tall in the middle of opposition because you understand that your struggle is sowing seeds of your success. Every challenge carries a lesson. Every challenge carries a skill. Every challenge carries perspective. And when you gather those lessons, those skills, those perspectives, you begin to rise above the person you used to be. The challenge you're facing today might be the very thing that equips you for the opportunity you've been praying for. You cannot ask for more and reject the process that develops you into the person who can handle more. Most people want elevation without preparation. They want increase without stretching. They want success without sacrifice. But life doesn't work like that. You don't get the reward before the refinement. You don't reach the mountaintop without climbing, and climbing is uncomfortable. It's tiring. It's painful. But that pain is the very thing that qualifies you to stand on the peak once you get there. Challenges also reveal the areas where you've settled. You can't fix what you don't face. You can't grow beyond what you refuse to acknowledge. When challenges come, they expose weaknesses you ignored, patterns you tolerated, and habits you never questioned. But that exposure is a gift, because once something is revealed, it can be rebuilt. Once something is exposed, it can be upgraded. Once something is uncovered, it can be transformed. When you start embracing challenges, you also begin to recognize that the struggle is temporary, but the growth is permanent. The discomfort may last for a moment, but the strength you gain lasts for a lifetime. The confusion might feel overwhelming now, but the clarity that comes after it becomes a tool you use forever. Challenges are not events, they are investments. They invest experience into your mind. They invest resilience into your character. They invest confidence into your identity. Someone with a challenge, embracing mindset does not run from hard things. They run toward them. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand the purpose and the process. They know that every time they push through something difficult, they become someone stronger. They understand that the only way to expand their capacity is to face what scares them, endure what stretches them, and conquer what tests them. When you begin to live this way, fear loses its power. Obstacles lose their intimidation. Failure loses its sting. Because when you see challenges as opportunities, failure becomes a teacher, not a threat. Every setback becomes a setup for a comeback. Every disappointment becomes alignment. Every breakdown becomes a breakthrough in disguise. You don't crumble when things get hard. You upgrade. And this mindset affects every area of your life. In your career, you start taking bold steps instead of settling for safe ones. In your business, you stop avoiding new strategies because they're unfamiliar. You test, you learn, you innovate. In your relationships, you stop withdrawing at the first sign of conflict. You grow, you communicate, you mature. In your personal life, you stop running from your weaknesses. You turn them into strengths. This mindset changes your emotional state as well. When you see challenges as preparation, frustration disappears. Anxiety decreases. Stress becomes manageable. You stop panicking and start strategizing. You stop reacting and start responding. You gain emotional stability because your perspective is rooted in purpose, not panic. There's a reason some people crumble under pressure while others rise from it. It's not because one group is lucky and the other isn't. It's because one group sees pressure as an enemy while the other sees it as a trainer. If pressure is your enemy, you'll spend your life tired and discouraged. But if pressure becomes your trainer, you'll spend your life growing and evolving. And the person who grows consistently is the person who wins consistently. But here's the truth. Embracing challenges is a choice. It's a decision you must make intentionally. Your instincts will always push you toward comfort. Your emotions will always push you toward what feels easy. But your purpose will only grow when you move toward what feels necessary, and growth rarely feels easy. The moment you start leaning into the challenge instead of away from it, you activate a version of yourself that you've never seen before. A version with more confidence, more clarity, more courage, more competence, and more capacity. A version of you that doesn't just survive obstacles, but uses them as stepping stones toward a higher level of achievement. So the next time a challenge comes your way, don't shrink, don't complain, don't retreat. Stand in it, learn from it, grow through it, and elevate because of it. Because the challenge you embrace today becomes the strength you stand on tomorrow. Value is the invisible force that determines your results long before effort, intention, or desire ever show up. Most people spend their lives chasing success without understanding that success is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by becoming a person of value. You don't get paid for time. You don't get rewarded for activity. And you don't get elevated because you want more. You get rewarded for the value you bring to the marketplace, to people's lives, and to the problems you solve. When you grasp this truth, everything about the way you move begins to shift. You stop living like someone waiting to be discovered, and you start operating like someone determined to increase your value daily. The reason many people stay stuck is because they measure their potential by how much they want something instead of how much value they can create. Wanting more does not increase your level. Complaining about what you don't have does not increase your level. Wishing for results, hoping for a breakthrough, or waiting for something to change does not increase your level. Value is created through transformation, not through desire. It grows through becoming, not through begging. The world does not respond to need, it responds to value. It doesn't reward desperation, it rewards contribution. Value is built in the private spaces of discipline, learning, focus, and skill development. Value is developed through consistency when no one is watching. It's developed through building something meaningful, even when it feels difficult. It's built through the willingness to endure inconvenience while others chase entertainment. The people who rise in life are not the ones who ask, "What can the world give me?" They are the ones who ask, "What can I create that the world will value?" That question shifts your identity. That question turns you from a consumer into a producer. That question makes you see your gifts, your experiences, your insights, and your challenges as tools that can serve others. But value will never increase until excuses decrease. Every excuse you cling to steals a fraction of your value. Excuses are the comfort blankets of the uncommitted. They make you feel better temporarily while stealing your potential permanently. An excuse is a story you tell yourself to justify staying the same. But staying the same is the enemy of value, because value is created through growth, and growth demands a version of you that is willing to outgrow everything that kept you comfortable but unproductive. Once you understand value, you stop defending your limitations. You stop rehearsing the narrative that keeps you small. You stop blaming people, circumstances, timing, and resources for where you are in life. Value doesn't grow in environments filled with excuses. It grows in environments filled with responsibility. The minute you take responsibility for raising your value is the minute your life begins to elevate. And the elevation doesn't start externally. It starts internally. You begin to think differently, work differently, speak differently, and even carry yourself differently. You start to recognize that your outcomes will always be a reflection of your value, not your wishes. When you focus on value, you become intentional about what you allow into your mind. You stop wasting energy on distractions that don't serve your purpose. You stop surrounding yourself with people who drain your potential. You stop engaging in habits that shrink your creativity and dull your discipline. Instead, you start investing in experiences, books, mentors, and environments that challenge you to grow. You start leaning into things that build capability, not comfort, because capability produces confidence, and confidence produces value. When you operate from a value-driven mindset, you begin to see problems differently. Most people run from problems because they see them as stress. A person of value runs toward problems because they see them as opportunity. Every problem you solve increases your value. Every need you fill increases your value. Every skill you master increases your value. You elevate your life by elevating your ability to solve problems. The marketplace rewards those who solve problems that matter. Think about any breakthrough you've had in your life. It came because you found a way to overcome something difficult. It came because you learned something new, adapted, stretched, or developed a new skill. That increase in capability is value. And once you grow, you can never ungrow. That value stays with you everywhere you go. It follows you in every relationship, every job, every business, every interaction. People can take opportunities from you, but they cannot take value from you. Value is internal. Value is personal. Value is something you carry, not something you borrow. The higher your value, the fewer limitations you feel. You stop feeling stuck because you realize you can create new paths through creativity, resilience, skill, and resourcefulness. You start seeing that the world is not closed. It simply opens itself to those who bring value. A person who increases their value never stays in the same place for long. The world pulls them upward. People look for them. Opportunities find them. Doors open for them, not because they are lucky, but because they are valuable. When you commit to raising your value, you also begin to separate yourself from average. Average people talk about effort. Valuable people talk about outcomes. Average people want ease. Valuable people want elevation. Average people want rewards without responsibility. Valuable people accept responsibility and therefore earn rewards. The difference is mindset. The difference is how you see yourself. The difference is whether you see life as something you're owed or something you can build. Increasing your value also changes the way you see time. You stop treating time like something you use to pass the day. You treat it like a vehicle for building the future. You stop spending time on low-value activities that yield no return. Instead, you invest time in high-value actions, learning, creating, practicing, improving. Time becomes a tool, not a trap. But the key to building value is decisiveness. You must decide who you want to become. You must decide what standard you will hold yourself to. You must decide that your growth is not negotiable. When you decide your habits align, when you decide your discipline activates, when you decide your excuses lose power, a life of high value is not built on wishful thinking. It's built on intentional decision. And once you raise your value, something incredible happens. You no longer chase opportunities. Opportunities chase you. You no longer prove yourself to people. Your value speaks for you. You no longer seek validation. Your results validate you. You no longer search for shortcuts because the long path has built a version of you that cannot be ignored. That is the power of value. It doesn't just change what you have, it changes who you become. And when who you become grows, everything around you begins to grow with it. Personal responsibility is the foundation of transformation because it is the moment you stop outsourcing your power. Most people want to change their life, but they don't want to change themselves. They want the results without embracing the responsibility required to produce those results. They want elevation without ownership, breakthrough without behavior change, and success without sacrifice. But nothing in life shifts until you step into the truth that your future is shaped by your decisions, not your desires. Responsibility is not punishment. It is empowerment. It is the realization that the life you want is not hiding from you. It is waiting on you to take command of your actions, your habits, your standards, and your direction. When you embrace personal responsibility, you stop blaming circumstances, people, timing, environment, and even your past for where you are. You may not have chosen everything that happened to you, but you get to choose what you do next. Responsibility is not about fault. It's about authority. It's about taking back control of your life instead of allowing excuses to dictate your outcomes. The moment you say, "It's on me," is the moment your mind awakens. Suddenly, you realize that nothing outside of you can stop you unless you allow it. And when you stop allowing it, your entire destiny begins to expand. Responsibility forces you to confront the truth about your habits. You begin to see that your daily actions are either building the future you desire or destroying it. You start noticing the patterns you've tolerated for years, the procrastination, the inconsistency, the emotional reactions, the lack of discipline, the avoidance of discomfort. And you must face the fact that these patterns didn't just appear, they were chosen, maybe unconsciously, maybe casually, but still chosen. Responsibility invites you to make new choices, choices that align with the life you want, not the comfort zone you cling to. When you take personal responsibility, you stop living reactively. You stop allowing life to happen to you. You stop waking up and simply responding to problems, emotions, and circumstances. Instead, you start living proactively. You create a vision, set a standard, establish routines, and build habits that support the person you want to become. You shift from being emotionally driven to being purpose driven. You start making decisions based on where you're going, not where you've been. And that shift alone can accelerate your growth faster than anything else. Personal responsibility also changes the way you interpret failure. When you operate from a place of excuses, failure becomes final. It becomes proof that you're not capable, not ready, or not meant for more. But when you embrace responsibility, failure becomes feedback. It becomes information. It becomes insight. Instead of saying, this didn't work, something is wrong with me, you say, this didn't work, what can I adjust? You stop personalizing failure and start analyzing it. You stop running from mistakes and start learning from them. This is how you evolve. This is how you refine. This is how you rise. People who avoid responsibility often stay stuck because they are more committed to protecting their pride than they are to growing their life. They defend habits that are destroying them. They justify choices that keep them stagnant. They build stories that excuse their lack of progress. But every excuse is a brick in the wall that separates you from your potential. Responsibility tears that wall down. Responsibility says, I can do better, not as a declaration of shame, but as a declaration of power. It is the belief that you can shift, you can grow, you can improve, and you can rise because you're willing to take the actions that produce that change. When responsibility becomes a part of your identity, your discipline increases automatically. You don't need motivation to make good decisions. Your commitment makes the decisions for you. You don't need to force yourself to act. You act because you understand that every action is a seed sowing your future harvest. Responsibility makes your purpose non-negotiable. It turns wishful thinking into intentional living. Taking responsibility also transforms your relationships. When you take ownership of your communication, your reactions, your boundaries, and your energy, you stop expecting others to navigate your emotions for you. You stop blaming people for what you allow. You stop holding grudges for things you never addressed. Responsibility helps you build stronger connections because it forces you to grow emotionally and communicate with clarity, maturity, and purpose. Financially, responsibility raises your standards. Instead of saying, I don't have money, you say, how can I create more value? Instead of saying, I can't afford it, you say, what must I learn to afford it? Responsibility eliminates the scarcity mindset and replaces it with a strategy mindset. It pushes you to build skills, develop discipline, and steward resources wisely. It shifts your identity from consumer to producer, from spender to investor, from paycheck mentality to purpose mentality. Responsibility also improves your emotional intelligence. You begin to recognize that emotions are not commands, they are signals. You stop letting fear dictate your decisions. You stop letting anger control your reactions. You stop letting doubt silence your potential. Responsibility teaches you that emotions are messengers, not masters. You learn to feel without being controlled, to acknowledge without being paralyzed, and to process without self-sabotage. One of the greatest gifts responsibility gives you is freedom. Most people think responsibility limits freedom, but the opposite is true. Responsibility gives you freedom from fear because you know you can handle challenges. It gives you freedom from guilt because your actions align with your values. It gives you freedom from regret because you live with intention. It gives you freedom from insecurity because you become confident in who you are becoming. Responsibility liberates you from the life you were settling for and guides you to the life you are capable of creating. Responsibility also forms the backbone of confidence. Confidence does not come from praise, approval, or external validation. It comes from the quiet knowing that you are doing what you said you would do. It comes from keeping promises you made to yourself. It comes from showing up even on the days you don't feel like it. Confidence is built through responsibility, through showing yourself that you are someone who follows through, someone who grows, someone who improves. At its core, responsibility is self-leadership. It is the recognition that no one is coming to save you. No one is coming to choose for you. No one is coming to build your habits, strengthen your mindset, or execute your goals, you are the leader of your life. And when you lead yourself well, opportunities, resources, and breakthroughs begin to align with you. The moment you take responsibility for your life is the moment your transformation begins. Because once you take responsibility for your actions, you gain influence over your outcomes. And once you gain influence over your outcomes, you gain control over your destiny. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that their progress is not being limited by their environment, their resources, their background, or their opportunities, but by their inability to consistently act on what they already know. The truth is, most people are not suffering because they lack information. They are suffering because they lack execution. They know what to do. They know what steps would change their life. They know what habits would elevate them. They know what decisions would break the cycles they keep complaining about. And yet, they wait, they overthink, they hesitate, they delay, and the delay becomes their destruction. The delay becomes the reason why doors stay closed, why breakthroughs don't happen, why transformation never takes root. The gap between knowing and doing is where dreams quietly suffocate, and until a person closes that gap, nothing in their life will change. But the moment someone makes the decision, an unbreakable, unapologetic decision, to take immediate action on truth, everything in their life shifts. You can write that down. Your transformation does not begin when you learn something new. It begins when you act on what you already know. Some people need another seminar, another video, another motivational moment, but what they really need is movement, motion, activation, radical obedience to the wisdom that is already inside them. Because revelation without application is wasted potential. Insight without implementation is intellectual entertainment. And there are people who have been entertained by truth for years, but never empowered by it, not because the truth lacked power, but because they lacked action. Action is the bridge between desire and destiny. It is the bridge between the life that exists in your imagination and the life that exists in your reality. You can pray, you can hope, you can wish, you can dream, you can visualize. But if you do not act, you cannot receive. Nothing changes on its own. Nothing improves by accident. Nothing transforms unless you deliberately move. Movement is proof of belief. When someone truly believes change is possible, they don't just agree with the idea, they demonstrate the idea. They step into it, they lean into it, they pursue it, they take messy action, imperfect action, bold action. And that action creates momentum, and momentum creates breakthrough, and breakthrough creates transformation. But here is what most people don't understand. You do not need massive action, you need consistent action. Small steps taken daily will outperform giant steps taken occasionally. A person who moves forward 1 inch every day will always outgrow the person who moves forward 1 mile once a year. Consistency compounds, consistency multiplies, consistency turns ordinary routines into extraordinary results. That is why the most successful people are not always the smartest, the richest, or the most talented. They are the most consistent. They do not rely on motivation because motivation is emotional and emotions change. They rely on discipline because discipline is a decision and decisions create direction. There are people who are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel energized. But readiness is a myth. Confidence is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. Energy is created by movement, not stored by waiting. The only way to become ready is to begin. The only way to become confident is to take action while you are insecure. The only way to gain strength is to move while you feel weak. Action unlocks everything, but hesitation kills momentum. You cannot win a race by standing at the starting line. You cannot reap a harvest by merely admiring the seed. You cannot build a future by thinking about it. The world does not reward intention. The world rewards execution. When a person adopts the mindset that action is non-negotiable, their entire identity shifts. They stop identifying as someone who hopes and start identifying as someone who moves. They stop identifying as someone who wishes and start identifying as someone who works. They stop seeing themselves as a victim of circumstances and start seeing themselves as a creator of outcomes. And as this identity shifts, their results shift with it. They start building habits that align with the future they want, not the past they've lived. They start saying no to distractions, no to procrastination, no to comfort zones, no to excuses. They start saying yes to discipline, yes to consistency, yes to courage, yes to the next step. And here is the powerful truth: the next step is always within reach. It may not be easy, but it is available. It may not be comfortable, but it is accessible. The next step doesn't require perfection, only willingness. The most significant transformations in life often start with the smallest acts of obedience: a decision to wake up earlier, a decision to read for 15 minutes, a decision to say no to something draining and yes to something empowering, a decision to start the business plan, a decision to make the phone call, a decision to invest instead of spending, a decision to speak life instead of negativity, a decision to move forward even when you don't have everything figured out. One action at a time, one day at a time, one shift at a time. But action also requires courage, because action exposes you. When you move, you risk failure. When you move, you risk embarrassment. When you move, you risk discomfort. And that is why so many people stay stuck. They would rather be comfortable in stagnation than uncomfortable in transformation. But comfort is the enemy of growth. Nothing great grows in comfort. The soil of greatness is challenge, pressure, discipline, and movement. And the people who rise are the people who embrace the discomfort of action rather than the illusion of safety and inaction. The moment you choose action over excuses, responsibility over blame, discipline over emotion, and persistence over convenience, your life begins to elevate. Doors start opening. Opportunities start appearing. People start noticing. Resources start aligning, not because life suddenly became easier, but because you stepped into alignment with growth. When you move, the universe moves. When you take action, you activate acceleration. When you act on truth, truth rewards you. And this mindset, the mindset that action is mandatory, that movement is non-negotiable, that execution is the difference maker, has the power to change your entire life. Because you are not waiting for destiny, destiny is waiting for you. You are not waiting for opportunity, opportunity is waiting for your movement. You are not waiting for a breakthrough. The breakthrough is waiting for your obedience to what you already know. When you decide to act relentlessly, consistently, courageously, everything changes.